She said, I'm not moving. You can't make the bed. You're gonna film this video and I'm gonna be right here on this messy bed. We'll see how long she lasts until my voice gets annoying. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph. So we are doing another episode of Love It or List It, but this one has kind of a twist because this is also going to be for the Magical Readathon. And as you may see, if you've watched Love It or List It before, I'm usually in front of my bookshelves because I pick my TBR with you. But because the Magical Readathon has specific prompts, I've already picked my TBR. So it's going to be a little bit different in terms of me picking the TBR, but the video remains the same. Am I going to love it and keep the book, or am I going to list it? Basically, Love It or List It is a series on my channel where I try to read backlist books. For me, backlist is anything that's been on my shelf for at least a year or longer. So I think the oldest book on my shelf is from 2017, and then I have a lot of books from 2022 and 2021. So I'm trying to read anything that's been a year or older. For whatever reason, like most of us bookworms, we don't get to those anticipated releases. So I'm trying to force myself to get through those releases and actually read the things that I was excited about. But the twist and why it's called Love It or List It is by the end of this video, I will determine what I'm keeping on my shelf and what I'm listing on Pango. And so anything that just doesn't captivate me anymore, or that I read and I didn't really enjoy, or I DNF'd in this video series, I will list on Pango, and then whatever I loved or surprised me, I will keep. If you don't know this about me, I don't keep anything on my shelves that I wouldn't reread. So even if I loved a book in this video, there is a possibility that something might get listed just because I don't see myself rereading it. And this has happened, I think, in the last Love It or List It. I'm pretty sure that happened. So that is a likelihood as well. But the whole point here is that I know that my reading taste has changed over the years, and things that I was really excited about back in 2017, I'm not as excited about anymore, and maybe they don't even align with my taste anymore. So this is a way for me to finally read those books that have just been lingering on my shelf, but also to finally get to anticipated releases. Usually in this video series, I give myself prompts or challenges that I try to get through, and today's challenge is to try to fulfill my Magical Readathon prompts by using backlisted titles. Before I get into the TBR, I should say that the Magical Readathon is hosted by the lovely G from Book Roast. She has created the most intricate and fun readathon that I've ever been a part of. Basically, you are reading books to build your character, to take your character on a journey, and to figure out what your character is going to do with their life in this new magical world. So I will link all of the information for this readathon down below. It did happen, obviously, in the month of August, so it is over now, but they do happen pretty much seasonally. But for now, I'll just take you through my TBR, and as I'm reading them, I'll tell you what prompts they fulfill. So one of the things I haven't been doing a lot this year is reading graphic novels and manga, and I'm newer to manga, but I've always loved graphic novels. So the first one is Spy Family Volume 1. I've had this on my shelf since it came out. I'm pretty sure it came out in like 2020 or 2021. I don't have any excuses. I don't know. As for graphic novel, I want to read Heartstopper Volume 4. I have put this off for long enough, but I'm planning to rewatch Heartstopper Season 1 so that I can watch Season 2, and I thought it would be the perfect time to pick up Heartstopper. I'm also going to be reading A Snake Falls to Earth. I was really excited for this release, and I'm not sure why I haven't picked it up, but I haven't. I really love Darcy Little Badger. She is Lippin Apache, and she tends to tell her stories in traditional Lippin Apache storytelling style. And I loved Alatsaway for that exact reason, so I'm really looking forward to A Snake Falls to Earth because I figure it'll probably be told similarly. And then I'll be picking up The Ninth Reign, which I've had on my TBR since like 2021. I don't know, around the time that I joined BookTube, I saw somebody talking about this and I went and bought the first book. And then subsequently I bought the other two because I don't have any control, apparently. That's another reason why I'm doing this video series. But you get the gist. I never got to it, even though I'm very excited about the series, but I'm finally starting it because this is my Patreon read-along series and everybody is starting it and they're already kind of talking about it in the Discord. So I need to get on it, and I'm very excited based on what they're feeling and saying in the Discord. And lastly, I'll be reading The Goblin Emperor. I have had this on my TBR also for quite a while. I've probably got it in 2020. I have heard nothing but amazing things about this book. Everything about it makes me feel like it's gonna be a 5-star read. It makes me feel like this is gonna be a new favorite book, but I don't wanna put too much pressure on it because this year has not been the year of 5 stars or favorites, so I'm not gonna put too much pressure on it. There's a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of things that make me think that I could love this quite a bit. So I'm actually gonna be starting with A Snake Falls to Earth. I started the audiobook for this morning. I'm not far. I'm probably like 4 or 5%. I'm intrigued. I'm not fully invested, but I'm intrigued. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Baby, I think I'm finally starting to get you. She told me through her teeth and her perfume, I never wanna see you again. But in the morning, she's pulling off her clothes in the bathroom. I'm standing in the hall, I'll be gone soon. Who did I think I was?
So I have some bad news. I am DNFing A Snake Falls to Earth. So this is for the prompt of a book with Earth in the title. I've also had this on my shelf since it came out, so I think that's been 2 years now, maybe a little over a year. But either way, I have been meaning to get to this. I really loved Lots Away, which is what I said in the beginning of this video, and I just feel disappointed by this one, but also it's not really even disappointment. I didn't have that high of expectations going into this, not because I thought it was going to be bad or anything like that. It's just that I've been so far away from the release of this book and the excitement of the release of this book that I didn't really have any more expectations about it. Unfortunately, I'm 198 pages in. I'm about here, so I guess I'm like halfway, and this is just not really captivating me in any meaningful way. I love the storytelling aspect of this. So Darcy Little Badger has this theme. It even happened in A Lots Away where we're going back and forth between this storytelling component and, you know, the plot. It all interweaves at points in time. It all comes together, but there is very much the storytelling component to it. And I do really enjoy that. That was actually one of my favorite parts of A Lots Away. And while I'm enjoying it in here, I'm not as compelled by the story. I'm not as into the story. But I think in cases like this where I've loved something by this author, it's harder for me to put it down because I'm like, no, I've loved something from this author before. This one just isn't my favorite, and I have to be okay with that. If I feel like keeping it, if I feel like I will actually come back to it and it can be a positive experience or a more positive experience, because I wasn't hating it. I just really wasn't invested. I wasn't retaining the story whatsoever, and I had to rewind a bunch of times. So yeah, we'll see if I decide to come back to this, but for now, this is a DNF. Technically, it still counts for the prompt of Earth in the title because I did get over 50% into the book, and I'm pretty sure DNFs count. I will have to fact check that actually, but I'm pretty sure DNFs count as long as you get a certain percentage in. But now I'm like, was that a different readathon that I'm thinking of? Hi, welcome to this horrible lighting. It's getting darker earlier. It is 8:25 right now, and it's starting to get darker earlier, which I have bittersweet feelings about. I actually do like when it stays lighter out for a bit longer, but I like colder weather. So it's like that give and take of summer brings brightness, but winter brings happiness for me. So I'm just getting home from work. It was my late day today, but because I went in a little bit later, I did read before work and I read on my break, and I'm about to pop in my headphones and read some more, but I'm reading The Goblin Emperor, and I am about 15% into the audiobook right now. I'm really enjoying listening to the audiobook, although there are so many names and terms that I don't know what they mean, but even if I read them with my eyeballs, I wouldn't know what they meant. But I'm just having a really good time with this book. There is literally, I'm not gonna say literally no plot, but the plot is minuscule. It is minute. It is definitely about the characters, but specifically our main character, Maya. His dad was the emperor and his dad died, and somehow he became the next one in line to succeed the throne. And he was as shocked about it as everyone else because he was not trained to be an emperor. His dad actually was never really in his life, so he's literally coming into this with no knowledge of how to be an emperor. And as a matter of fact, he didn't even live in the castle. He wasn't raised in the castle. He wasn't really raised among nobility. His cousin was the one to raise him, and so he is literally trying to figure out how to run an empire. So it's interesting in that the plot, it's there. Like, obviously it is about the day-to-day of running an empire, especially at a young age and especially not knowing what you're doing. But really it's just very character driven, and I think I just love the characters and I love the vibes of this book. I also am really enjoying the way that this is written. It's very formal. I wouldn't call it Old English exactly, but there is a formality to the way this is written, but it just keeps adding to the vibes. So yeah, I don't know. I know that I've been putting this book off because it is sort of a 5-star prediction for me. Secretly in the back of my head, every time I'm like, I feel like I'm gonna love this book. But every time I say something is a 5-star prediction, I'm always wrong. So I never want to say it out loud anymore. Did I totally jinx myself? I don't really know. We will find out. Stay tuned.
Saw you paint a picture of a face, a face that wasn't even close to mine. I know I shouldn't be in love, but it's so hard to move on. You haven't changed, you stayed the same. But if you did, I'd still love you anyway. I'd give you the world like I promised I would, even though you wouldn't do the same.
Hello, yes, I look like this because I have a really bad migraine. But I'm currently reading The Goblin Emperor, which you would have known from my last update. I'm still reading this and I'm still really loving it. I am. So I'm 223 pages into this, still loving it. I'm like 99.9% sure that this is going to be a 5-star read. This is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. There's just something about our main character Maya, who is now the emperor, that I don't know. He has my whole heart. My entire heart. He has it in the palm of his little goblin hand. One of the things that I didn't mention in my last update that I'm really enjoying about this book, and I think it kind of only hit me more recently, like in the last 100 pages. This is such an interesting exploration of, like, obviously somebody being put on a throne that they were never really intended to have. But it's also Maya's exploration of his father and like who his father was and who his father was to him, and the resentment that he kind of holds towards his father, but also kind of being put in a position where he understands his father more than he ever would have in any other circumstance, because he is now an emperor and he's like, wow, this is what my father put up with. And so he's kind of like seeing what his father's life was like and what his father was kind of forced to do, aka marriages of convenience, marriages of political gain. And Maya is being pushed into the idea that he has to get married. And so he's being introduced to all of these different women and he's like, well, I don't want to get married. And they're like, well, you have to. It doesn't really matter what you want. And so I think he's getting a better understanding of his father. Not that that's changing his overall opinion of their relationship and like what he felt towards his father for so many years. But in the last 100 pages, I don't know, I just started to notice how there is such a deep exploration of this father-son relationship that didn't really exist because his father didn't raise him and his mother died when he was fairly young, and so he was raised by a cousin who resented him and hated him, and he hates his cousin. And so it's interesting just to see him grappling with the past, and so it's really emotional to see him grappling with the past and these different types of relationships that he had growing up, and that they were kind of toxic and they weren't really fond memories for him. And so I think it's sweet because he is still so just kind, and he tries to rule this empire with his heart instead of his wits, and like he's not trying to outsmart people. I mean, he is, because people are trying to outsmart him and trying to make him look a fool. but he's more so leading with his heart, and he really just wants to be a good emperor and an emperor who makes the right decisions, not only for his gain, but for the gain of the empire and those that have no voice, really. And so I just love Maya so much. I'm gonna go make a matcha because hopefully that will help my headache a little bit, having some caffeine. And I am tired. I'm so sleepy today.
Silver dollars and champagne for the trouble. It's a t-shirt in the backseat of your car. Head down just like your father taught you. Stick around when the walls start to fall. Good God, does anybody notice you sat at the table and you listened to her scream? I know we've had a few too many. I'm not sure what to believe. Beauty queens and rock and rollers.
Hello, I'm listening to my Animal Crossing music plus rain sounds. It's so relaxing. As a matter of fact, I really want to restart my island again. I think this time last year I did restart it, and I thought that I would regret it, but I didn't. But I also have my Switch next to me because I'm thinking about buying Breakfast and Bear, or Bear and Breakfast. I think it's called Bear and Breakfast, because it's a cozy game where you're a bear running a bear Airbnb, Bear B&B, bed and breakfast. It kind of sounds like the perfect combination of Cozy Grove and Animal Crossing. So I'm like, should I just download that one, or should I restart my island, or should I do all of those things? I don't really know. So I brought my Switch in here because I'm about to start sprints with Christine and Mo from the Roomies Digest. We're about to do sprints, and I want to finish Heartstopper Volume 4, which you would have seen. I started this on one of my lunch breaks at work, and I put a random piece of paper in there because I didn't have a bookmark. So I got this far on my break and I haven't been able to pick it up since, so I want to finish it right now. I'm also rewatching Heartstopper again. I finished season 2 and immediately went back into season 1. We'll see how long that lasts because I'm a comfort watcher, so when I find a show that I find a lot of comfort in, I will just watch it over and 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 over again. This will also count for reading it in 2 different spots, or in a different spot every time you read it. So I started it at work, which was the first spot, and then hopefully I will finish it here in the office. So yeah, I'm gonna start this before the sprints even start. The sprints will start in like 30 minutes, but I came in here to play with Gus before he gets fed in like an hour. And I also have a snack: hot Cheetos, iced tea, water. Still here listening to my Animal Crossing music, but I finished Heartstopper Volume 4 and I loved it. Volume 4 is definitely a lot darker than any of the other volumes. I guess in Volume 3, like halfway through, we do get this exploration of mental health, and it's the beginning of this journey that I think we're gonna kind of go deeper into as the volumes continue. And this one, right off the bat, it was definitely about all of the mental health stuff that was sort of talked about / hinted at in Volume 3. This one the whole time is not as lighthearted, but at the same time it is. There's these little moments that are a reprieve from some of the darker and more difficult topics, and I loved it. I love these characters so much. I do forget though, because I have now rewatched Heartstopper quite a few times. Since I've seen the show so much, I forgot there's like certain characters in here that don't really exist in the show and probably will never exist in the show. And then there's characters that kind of have become different characters in the show, but they're definitely supposed to be certain characters in here. One of the things I think that I said that I'm really loving about the show in general is that it's exploring all of our side characters a lot more than in this book. Like, all of the side characters have little moments where through Charlie or through Nick, we get to see certain situations or like struggles that the other characters are going through, but we don't get to see it as in depth as the show has it. So I really appreciate the show for that, because there's some romances and some character arcs that I'm loving in the show that I'm not sure we're gonna see in the volumes, which is fine. I'm glad that I finally picked up volume 4. The 5th one comes out in December, so it's not too far off from, you know, finishing this one. And I took a while, obviously, to get to this one. And I'm glad that I finally did. And I'm also glad that I waited until I finished the 2nd season to dive into this. Although, if you don't want any spoilers for volume 3 or 4, I wouldn't watch the 2nd season because it has a lot of things from both of those volumes. I guess I should say what Heartstopper is about, because I don't think I've said what it's about at all, but essentially you have two characters. That's Charlie, that's Nick, and in the first volume, it's all about Nick coming to terms with being bisexual and having a crush on Charlie, and Charlie is gay and he's been out for a while, but his coming out story was really difficult. Like, you get to see the aftermath of that, but it does talk extensively in the first volume about how his coming out story affected him and the bullying that he had to endure because of it. And so in volume 1, you are seeing Nick's coming out story and Charlie being there for him and their romance blossoming. There are also really great friendships in here. There's a lot of great side romances as well, and I think you'll fall in love with the characters if you're gonna pick this up, because it's really sweet. It's obviously YA, so I mean, go into it with that mindset, but it's really sweet, and I'm glad that this book exists, and I'm just glad that Alice Oseman is writing the books that they're writing. So yeah, I think it's safe to say I will be keeping this one for sure. I'm not unhauling it. I'm not really gonna give this a star rating. I don't think I've star rated any of them. If I did, I maybe gave them 5 stars. I don't really know. It's definitely a 5-star series for me, but I feel like it's hard to rate these because it's clearly an unfinished story. So I'm gonna wait until all of the volumes come out before I like settle on what this whole series rating is for me. But I think it's like, in my heart, it's a 5 out of 5. It's a 10 out of 10. This also officially completes the prompt for reading a book in a different place every time you pick it up. So it completes that prompt for the Magical Readathon. But now we have 20 minutes of sprints left, so I'm gonna pick up The Goblin Emperor. You already know I'm loving this. I definitely won't be able to finish it tonight because I have, you know, more than half left, but I hope that tomorrow I can finish it. We'll see. We shall see.
Give you the world like I promised I would. Even though you wouldn't do the same. I'd give you the world like I promised I would. Even though you wouldn't do the same.
I just got home from a very long day at work and I came home and immediately showered, and like, you know when you shower and you're just like so relaxed, and now I'm feeling really sleepy. But today, while I was on my way to work, I actually finished The Goblin Emperor. I've been listening to the audiobook. I was gonna read this physically, but then I ended up really enjoying the audiobook experience, and I actually highly recommend the audiobook if you are an audiobook listener. I really enjoyed the narrator. I mean, I think you get the gist. I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I talked pretty in depth about it in a few other clips, but I will say that the ending was really satisfying. It was exactly what I wanted for our main character, and I think there were some situations and circumstances that were resolved in a way that I really appreciated. It wasn't that things were like wrapped up with a bow on top, but it almost gave you that feeling, only because I really wanted certain things for Maya, and I felt like in ways we definitely got that, but obviously him being an emperor, there are just certain circumstances, certain situations that are never going to resolve the way that we would like to see them happen, because he is so restricted with what he can give to people and how much of himself he has to protect, you know? And so I just love that it really went from this innocent 18-year-old thrust into this emperor situation, and he's just trying to lead in the best way that he possibly can. But he desperately wants friendship and he wants companionship. And he has this moment in the book where he starts to realize that he no longer has privacy in any capacity, like not even sleeping, not even taking a shower. There's just the illusion of privacy in many situations, and there's a whole scene where he talks about this feeling of realizing that his privacy was completely stripped of him just overnight. Like, it happened literally overnight. And when he comes to that realization, it like hits you as a reader too, because to imagine not being able to, I don't know, come home from work and take a shower and like not have to talk to or see anybody but my cats. Like, it just really hit me deeply. And there's a lot of moments and character interactions that hit me really deeply. I was definitely crying and tearing up a lot during the last 20% of this book, and I think it really ends on a high note. I do think that the world building and the character development and the plot that we did have is so well developed in here that you wouldn't need a series. You may want it because you want more from these characters, but I feel like it is so well done in the pages that we have in this singular book. And so I don't know, I love this so much. This is by far going to be one of my favorite books of the year. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm just so glad that Fitzy forced me to read this, because this is my pet pick for the Magical Readathon. I didn't get the chance to talk about it, but I did pick up Spy Family Volume 1 before bed, and I ended up just finishing it. And I really enjoyed Volume 1 a lot. I read half of Volume 1 a while ago, and then I just didn't continue on for no particular reason. I think I just forgot that I was in the middle of reading it, and so I just restarted it, and it was really, really fun. Basically, our main character, Twilight, is a master spy, and he takes on a lot of different roles and projects where he has to assume different identities and different disguises. And so he is now being assigned to this role where he needs to get in with the parents and the teachers at this really prestigious school. But in order to do that, he obviously has to have a family. So he has to adopt a child and marry somebody within enough time to be able to get his child enrolled in this very prestigious school. So he ends up adopting this little girl named Anya. Little does he know that Anya is a telepath. And I mean, she doesn't really make that known. So that's a really fun part. And then he ends up in a fake marriage with a woman named Yor, and Yor happens to be an assassin. And so none of them really know what each other is or does. And it's really fun. I'm slightly obsessed with this really weird family that I think is gonna be pretty badass. Hi, I'm constantly in my office because I'm hanging out with Goosito, and I need to show you him right now because he loves his crate. We have somehow crate trained him. I guess it's not a crate, it's just carrier, but he loves carrier. I'm also wearing the perfect shirt today. Anyway, I started the 9th grade and I'm simply obsessed. I'm simply obsessed with it. I was hybrid reading it at first. Now I'm mainly listening to it on audio because I needed to get some things done around the house and I don't want to stop reading it. So I was like, let's just go to the audio. This is also such a surprising read because I've only seen like 3 people review this book and then a bunch of people talking about how they want to read the book. The world building is so unique. I haven't really read many worlds like this. It kind of takes that traditional, there's a war or there was a war, and we're in the aftermath of that with the possibility of another impending war. Some of the gods are dead, some are still very much alive. So it's very classic fantasy in that way, but then there are different types of creatures and beings in here that I haven't really seen utilized before. There are bats that you can ride, which is very cool. and they possibly are companions to witches. There are witches in here as well, and the witches are very cool. And then the characters that you're following, there's 4 really distinct main characters in here, and I was afraid that we were going to spend a good portion of this book with them separated, but actually they come together pretty quickly, and it's so funny. The dynamic between them, hilarious. There is a main character named Vintage, and she is quite literally everything to me. I love her. She is so funny. She's basically a scholar, and she is sort of the forefront of this group being together. And I just love her attitude about things and the way that she interacts with people. I really enjoy her as a character, and I'm glad that she's one of the main characters in here, because I think that's what's making me want to read more. So I don't know, I'm just having a really good time. So I'm gonna go continue listening to this and make some breakfast before I have to go to work and actually stop reading for the day. Hi, I just got back from my pottery class. Turns out pottery is pretty fucking hard. It's pretty hard, but I'm one of the only people in the class who hasn't taken one of these classes before. I guess people just keep retaking them and like use it as a workshop type of thing, which smart, because it's probably the cheapest way to be able to do pottery. Second, I'm also one of the youngest ones in the class, so the 3 Susans took me under their wings and have been helping me through the process. The instructor is decent. She was like helping me out on things, but I think it's because so many people have already done these classes before. She's kind of like really laid back, and I'm like, I've never done this. What are these tools? What are we doing? But they're having a contest with all the pottery classes for the fall season to make teapots, and the most fun or creative teapot is going to win. And I'm trying to make a strawberry teapot, like not with strawberries on it. I want it to be a strawberry. It might be overly ambitious, but that's my goal. But it was really fun. I'm so glad that I'm doing it. I was very nervous, and the first like 20 minutes of class were not great for me, because it was like the instructor forgot that I existed and that I have never done anything before. And then the Susans were helping me, and she came on board and was like, oh, let's make a teapot together. And I was like, cool, let's do it. Let's go, Deborah. Secondly, Goose is at the vet right now getting his 2nd round of vaccines, which means we are 1 step closer to him not being isolated. If you don't know about Goose, I have talked about Goose before, but Goose is a stray cat who was living in our garage. We decided to adopt him after some investigation around the neighborhood to see if he was anybody's in the neighborhood and he just got out, as well as when we took him to the vet for the first time. We had him scanned for a chip. There was no chip found. He wasn't fixed. He's only like 8 or 9 months old, but he has, I'm not gonna be able to say it, and I'm very sorry, but one of his testicles grew inside of him. So he has to get like a full-on surgery to get neutered. So hopefully this is the 2nd round of vaccines. I think it's the last round of vaccines before we can schedule him to get fixed. But because he's not fixed, he has been meeting the girls, like they've met. So update on that. They did meet and it went fine. Like it wasn't amazing. It wasn't horrible. There was no like real animosity, just mainly hiding. But I really expected that from Olive and Fitzy anyway. Fitzy, again, is the brave girl. Even though Olive is the more social one, Fitzy is definitely more brave, and she went right up to him and he felt a little uncomfortable, I think, by it. And so it was a weird time, but there hasn't been anything like super aggressive as of yet. So I'm trying to take that as a good sign. So yeah, those are my updates. As for reading, I'm halfway through 9th Reign. I love this, okay? I'm having the greatest time. I know I said this in my last update, but I really am. I continue to really enjoy this. I actually want to read you the back of this only because I think they do a really good job of talking about all of the characters coming together in this. So it says, the city of Abora once glittered with gold. Now its streets are stalked by wolves. Tourmalin the Oathless has no taste for waiting to die, while the realm of his ancestors falls to pieces. When eccentric explorer Lady Vincenza Vintage de Grazon offers him employment, he sees a way out. Even when they are joined by a fugitive witch with the tendency to set things on fire, the prospects of facing down monsters and retrieving artifacts is preferable to the abomination left behind. But not everyone is willing to let the empire collapse, and the adventurers are soon drawn into a tangled conspiracy of magic and war. The Alllyah are coming, and the Ninth Reign must fall. So our three main characters are Tourmaline, the Oathless, but he's better known as Tor, then Vintage, and Noon, who is the witch. Tourmaline is from a race of people, the Abora people, and the Abora people used to have this ancient tree god, and this tree god would produce sap that was literally the lifeblood of their people. And this god dies after the 8th reign, and they're trying to figure out how to bring it back. In the midst of that, they find out that drinking human blood actually will sustain them. They come to find out that there is a blood plague. So the more they drink the human blood, the more they're susceptible to this plague that eventually cuts their life in half. So the Abora people are kind of known to live upwards of thousands of years, and now they may live 500, which, I mean, still... it's a long time, but I guess if you're living upwards of 1,000 years, 500 is not as long. And so this blood plague has wiped out the Abora race for the most part. There are still obviously people living like Tor and his sister Hestilian, who you do see. She's not as prevalent as the other three characters, but you do see her. And in the very beginning of the book, Hestilian is trying to bring sacrifices to the tree god to get him to come alive again, and it's not working. So that's like the very beginning of the book. You also find out that Vintage, she is sort of a scholar, sort of a traveler, but she is looking to uncover something, which we as readers are learning about through Tor and Vintage's little adventures together, and now Noon being among them. They're all learning about the worm people and why these huge ghost-like parasites will attack anything in its path. I think the premise of this is so interesting because it's unlike anything that I've read before, and I haven't seen many of these creatures used in the way that they are in this book. And I also haven't seen bugs used the way that they are in this book. It's also really fun. Like, there is a sense of sarcasm and adventure in the writing. And so it has a very readable quality to it because it's really funny. Vintage is hilarious. She is my favorite character. I also really like Noon because there's so much unknown about the witches. The only thing we know about Noon is that she was being held in this like prison basically for witches, and the people holding them there were calling them monstrous, calling them murderers. And it seems that a lot of the witches can't control their powers, and their powers are very deadly, and their powers also drain the life force of various people. So I have hope that in the second book, maybe we'll learn more about the witches. We also know very little about this prison that is holding these witches, why they're holding the witches. So this book is really interesting because it like has these horrific elements to it, but it's also like very whimsical and fun and hilarious, and just like doesn't take itself too seriously. And there's various mysteries happening, and there's this dream that multiple people have had that is essentially telling them that something is coming, and it's very ominous. So I'm just loving the vibes of this, and like the way this is reading, I just feel like I could read the whole series in a week and it would be a really fun time. Hi, the lighting is bad. I look like this because I just had the worst day of my career ever. I didn't want to get on camera, but Erin just sent me a package. She didn't just send it to me. She sent me a package and it just got here, and it's like my birthday package, and I wanted to open it with you because I think it'll make me feel better. And I also just, I don't know, I wanted to commemorate, is that the word? I wanted to remember my enjoyment of this. And you know, Erin is like one of my best friends, and this is just really special to me. So we're just gonna open it, okay? We're gonna open it. So a Sleep Ultimate Hydration Body Cream, which I know she got this for me because I have a really difficult time sleeping, and a lavender vanilla candle, which I'm pretty sure, is this all? Yes, lavender vanilla. So this will be perfect to just get myself relaxed. Actually, I'm gonna put some of this on right now. It smells nice. Ooh, that scent. Maybe it'll make me feel better. It'll miraculously heal me. It's a ghost wallflower. Wait. Wait, I love it so much. Ooh, another one. Another little bundle. Aromatherapy, natural essential oils, lavender and vanilla, shower steamers. I've never used a shower steamer before. That's so cool. So I do know they go in your shower, like on the floor of your shower, and then it's supposed to be like aromatherapy. Thank you. I'm excited to try that. I might do that tonight. You know when you need to just like decompress. I also have like a horrible migraine right now. I don't know how I'm like functioning, but you know when you just like go into survival mode. And a bath soak, all the same scent. This is really getting me prepped for healing, you know, a healing moment. Cats! I love these. These are so fun. Wow, she really knows me. One could say we're best friends. A fairy loot bag. A fairy loot bag. Okay, so Our Wives Under the Sea. I actually read this last year and loved it. And I've always wanted a copy of it, but everywhere I go, it is sold out. Thank you so much. I can't wait to reread this physically because I listened to it on audiobook. And this little guy, I have been seeing this everywhere. There are stickers inside. There are stickers inside. To finish my thought, I've been seeing this everywhere and a lot of people have been giving it 5 stars, talking about how it's really awesome. It's a little novella. But let's look at these stickers. Death by TBR. The one and only way I want to go. Daddy is a state of mind. If you don't know, I love Pedro Pascal, but specifically I just love Life. I almost said Life is Strange. The Last of Us. This is also hilarious because if you can tell, those are possums, and I always send her those like raccoon and possum memes that are like, my mental illness is chronic, but my ass is iconic. Bootyful. It's a ghost. If you don't know me, if you're new here, ghosts are like my favorite thing. I have a ghost tattoo and I just love ghosts. A mushroom puzzle! A mushroom puzzle. Okay, so I love puzzles, love mushrooms. This box is shaping up to make my day way better. What's this? Okay, 2 things. It's a mushroom and this is so cute, but when I felt it, I was like, is this a taser? It's hand sanitizer, okay? But this is so cute. Oh, what's the flavor? Lavender vanilla. Lavender vanilla. It's the scent thing that goes in this little guy. Flannel. Wait, I feel like I've smelled this before. I had a thought in the middle of doing this that I was like, did I even press record? There's a huge red light on it that would indicate that I did press record. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to go, you know, like text Erin because I have so many emotions. Hello friends, it is the final day of the Magical Readathon actually, and I have finished my final book for the Magical Readathon, which was Ninth Reign. So the Ninth Reign fulfilled the prompt to start a new book in a series. So this is the first book in the Winnowing Flame. I'm pretty sure it's called the Winnowing Flame series. So yes, I started the first book, I finished it, and I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5. This was such a surprising read for me only because I did try to read this a few months ago when I was in a pretty bad reading slump and it just was not a good time for me. I ended up putting it down, and it's funny because when I got back into the book this time around, I restarted it and it was just like a completely different vibe than what I even remembered. And this is why I say I'm definitely somebody who has to be in the right headspace for certain books, because some books hit just completely different for me when I'm in specific headspaces, which is why I call myself a mood reader. I don't know if I'm like specifically a mood reader, like the traditional type of mood reader that we think of that bounces around from different books all the time depending on their mood, but I definitely have to be in the correct headspace for certain books. Recently, fantasy is what I'm craving, so that's what I've been trying to read, but I have had some, you know, palette cleansers in between, and I think that might be helping as well. I don't really know, but either way, I'm giving this a 4.5, and this was such a high note to end on for the Magical Readathon. I feel like I had such a good Magical Readathon in general. Obviously, you saw some of those reads in the Jared vlog. You're seeing many of them in this vlog, but this was so fun. I ended up becoming really attached to the characters. I especially love Vintage, Tor, and Noon as our like 3 main protagonists. They were great protagonists to follow because I like all 3 of them, and I like all 3 of them for different reasons. So they brought something different to the table in this book, and I really enjoy that when you have such a dynamic cast of characters that are there definitely for different purposes, and they fulfill those purposes in a way that just feels correct for the story, if that makes any sense. I also ended up loving the way that this ended, and some of the like creatures that we get introduced to in the last quarter of this book. I'm so excited and interested to see where that's leading to in the rest of this trilogy. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention was that if you're gonna pick this up, I really think that you should marathon the trilogy. I'm not doing that because this is the read along for my Patreon, so we're discussing one over the course of 3 months, right? And so I don't want to forget things in detail, so I'm going to read them closer to the live shows. But if you have the opportunity to marathon this, I feel like this would be such a fun series to marathon. The characters are really witty and pretty funny, and I like their dynamic, and it also just reads in a way that's kind of like candy. You just want to keep going and you want to know what's going to happen, and it compels you to keep reading forward to find out what's going to happen. This ends obviously on a cliffhanger, so I'm very curious what's going to be taking place in the next couple of books based on how this ended. I know I said it before, but I feel like this world and a lot of the utilization of the creatures and the world building and the magic system in here was so unique. It was definitely more unique than I anticipated, and I'm sure you could feel certain classic fantasy vibes within this, but there's also like a blending of genres in here. I feel like there's some science fiction in here, not heavily. I wouldn't say that this is science fiction, but there is definitely this like blend of different genres and things that you're gonna see in here. I think the way that I think of it, and this is by no means a comparison, but like the 5th season, the way that there's this blending of fantasy and sci-fi, but that one leans more sci-fi, I feel, than maybe fantasy, whereas this one would lead more fantasy than sci-fi. But there were so many great images in here, and like there are races of people and like creatures that I for sure cannot picture in my brain. And like, I'm a very visual reader. I see pictures when I'm reading, which I know is not a thing for everybody, which blew my mind. But I personally am a visual reader, so I see images, and I could not for the life of me picture some of the things in here. Like, I had images in my brain, but I'm pretty sure that's not what the author was intending. I'm just gonna say it. Also, I saw a review of this, right? And I said to you in the beginning when I was describing this book that the Abora people, I mean, you could like consider them sort of like vampires, I guess, because they drink blood, but they don't by nature drink blood, and that's not what causes them to have a long lifespan, and they're not immortal or whatever. They just like had to resort to drinking human blood because of circumstances. And so I wouldn't say that they're vampires, but I pictured them in a very not specific way because it's definitely not well fleshed out in my brain, but I had an idea about what the Abora people are supposed to be. And then I read a review and somebody said that they were like blood-sucking elves, and I was like Lord of the Rings elves? Like, what kind of elves are we talking about? Because that is not what I pictured. But now I'm like, are they? But yeah, I had so much fun with this. So obviously this is a Love It or Listed, and I'm not in front of my bookshelves, but that's because I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not listing anything. I just can't bring myself to list any of these, to be honest with you. Even though I DNF'd A Snake Falls to Earth, I just can't bring myself to list it and fully DNF it. So it's one that I'm gonna try again at another point in time. But otherwise, like, everything was a hit for me. So I'm gonna be keeping everything, which is the first time in Love It or Listed history. There's literally only been like 3 episodes of Love It or Listed, so I don't know why I'm acting like this is monumental. But this is the first time that I've kept everything in a video and that I've enjoyed 90% of everything that I've read. But also this Love It or Listed is a combination of the Magical Readathon. So I will tell you what prompts everything fulfilled. So as you know, this was to fulfill for a first in the series. Heartstopper fulfilled the prompt to read it in a different place every time you picked it up. A Snake Falls to Earth fulfilled the prompt for Earth in the title. Spy Family fulfilled the prompt to read a book before bed. And the Goblin Emperor fulfilled the prompt of having my pet pick my read. And so Fitzy picked the Goblin Emperor. And she's very adamant about me reading this, and honestly, now I kind of trust her taste, because this was by far my favorite book of the vlog, probably my favorite book of the month. The Goblin Emperor just really snuck up on me and surprised me with how much I loved it. Likely be one of my favorite books of the year, so I'm glad that I got to pick this up and read it. Okay, so that's another episode of Love It or Listed. If you've made it this far and you want to leave anything down below, feel free to leave any magical emojis in the comments, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, friends.